The village of Oluo buzzed with life, and among its many families, Ayo and Amara stood as the couple everyone admired. Ayo, a respected businessman, was known for his success and generosity. Amara, warm and nurturing, was the heart of their family, balancing her roles as a devoted wife, loving mother, and active member of the community. Together, they seemed to have the perfect marriage, a partnership built on trust, love, and shared dreams. But perfection is often an illusion. Amara first noticed small changes. Ayo, once attentive and punctual, began coming home late, claiming it was due to the demands of his growing business. Amara, ever supportive, didn't question him, preparing his favorite meals and waiting up for him at night. But his absences grew more frequent, and the warmth between them began to fade. Their once lively conversations became short and strained, and Ayo seemed preoccupied, as if carrying a burden he couldn't share. The turning point came one evening when Ayo's phone buzzed on the counter while he was in the shower. Amara hesitated before glancing at the screen. The message preview read, "I can't stop thinking about you. When will I see you again?" The sender was saved as K. Amara's heart sank as doubt and fear crept in. She wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, but as the days passed, other signs appeared. Ayo's phone calls were secretive. His wardrobe suddenly included new clothes she hadn't seen before, and he became more irritable. Even their children noticed the change. "Why doesn't Papa play with us anymore?" their eldest son asked one evening. Amara forced a smile. "He's just busy with work," she said, though the words felt like a lie. Her nights became sleepless, her mind racing with questions she was too afraid to voice. Was Ayo hiding something? The perfect marriage she had cherished felt like it was slipping away, and Amara couldn't ignore the growing cracks in their foundation. It was a quiet evening when Amara decided to tidy up Ayo's car, a task she often did as a small gesture of love. The car, parked under the mango tree, was cluttered with receipts, wrappers, and the usual signs of a busy life. As she cleaned, her thoughts lingered on Ayo's recent behavior, his late nights, evasive answers, and growing distance. She wanted to believe it was work stress, but a nagging unease had begun to take hold. Her hand reached for the glove compartment, and as she opened it, she felt something soft. Pulling it out, she froze. A red handkerchief, delicate and embroidered with gold flowers. It wasn't hers. The faint scent of perfume, unfamiliar and musky, clung to the fabric. Her heart sank as she noticed a faint lipstick stain on one corner. Amara's chest tightened. She told herself it could belong to a client or colleague, but the lingering scent and intimate nature of the item suggested otherwise. Placing it back in the glove compartment, her hands trembled. She leaned against the car, her mind racing to reconcile the discovery with the man she trusted. That night, as they sat at dinner, Amara couldn't bring herself to meet Ayo's gaze. His casual demeanor felt forced, and his easy smile only deepened her doubts. "Is something wrong?" he asked, sensing her distraction. "No, just tired," Amara replied, her voice unconvincing even to herself. As Ayo slept soundly beside her that night, Amara lay awake, replaying moments she hadn't questioned before. The late-night calls he took outside, the new cologne, his frequent absences, all of it began to feel connected. The red handkerchief had planted a seed of suspicion, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the unease it brought. In the days that followed, Amara watched Ayo more closely. His phone was always close at hand, his answers to her questions vague. The warmth she once felt in their interactions seemed to have been replaced by an invisible wall. She struggled to find the courage to confront him, fearing what the answers might reveal. The handkerchief became a symbol of her doubts, a tangible reminder that their perfect marriage might not be as unbreakable as she had believed. But she longed to ignore her suspicions. The truth felt like it was lurking just beyond her reach, waiting to shatter the illusion she had so carefully nurtured. Amara resolved to remain silent for now, but deep inside, she knew that silence wouldn't last. The cracks in their relationship were growing, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. Amara's suspicions about Ayo had grown unbearable. The late-night calls, unexplained absences, and the red handkerchief haunted her thoughts. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, but the doubts wouldn't leave her. When Ayo announced one evening that he had a late business meeting in a neighboring town, Amara's unease reached a breaking point. As soon as Ayo left, Amara grabbed her car keys and followed him. Her heart pounded as she drove down the quiet, moonlit road, keeping a safe distance from his car. Every mile felt like an eternity, her mind racing with possibilities she wasn't ready to face. After a while, Ayo's car turned onto a narrow, secluded street and stopped outside a modest house. Amara parked a short distance away, her breath catching as she watched him step out and walk toward the house. Keeping to the shadows, she crept closer, her chest tightening with every step. Through the partially open curtains, Amara saw Ayo sitting on a couch with another woman. The woman, laughing and leaning toward him, rested her hand on his arm. Ayo didn't pull away. Instead, he smiled at her, a warm, familiar smile Amara hadn't seen in months. The sight felt like a physical blow. Amara's stomach churned as she watched the scene unfold. The woman handed Ayo a drink, and their gestures spoke of intimacy and familiarity. This wasn't a business meeting, it was something far more personal. The truth hit her like a wave. Ayo was betraying her. Her heart shattered when the woman leaned in and kissed Ayo on the cheek. Though brief, the gesture was enough to confirm Amara's worst fears. She clutched her knees, fighting back tears as she tried to process the betrayal. When Ayo finally left the house and drove away, Amara remained hidden, unable to move. The image of him laughing with another woman burned in her mind. After gathering the strength to return to her car, she drove home in silence, the pain pressing heavily on her chest. Back at home, the house was quiet. Amara stood in the living room, staring at family photographs on the walls. They once symbolized love and happiness, but now they felt like cruel reminders of what she had lost. As she lay awake that night, tears streaming down her face, Amara resolved to uncover the full truth. The perfect marriage she had believed in was gone. Betrayal had taken its place, but Amara refused to let it consume her. She would confront Ayo and reclaim her dignity, no matter how much it hurt. Amara sat in the living room, the quiet of the house amplifying the storm raging within her. The memory of Ayo with another woman replayed in her mind, each image cutting deeper than the last. She had to confront him, but the thought filled her with both dread and anger. When she heard his car pull into the driveway, her resolve hardened. Ayo walked in, looking startled to find her waiting. "Amara, you're still awake? It's late," he said, his tone casual. She looked at him, her voice steady but icy. "We need to talk." Ayo hesitated, sensing her seriousness. "Of course. What's wrong?" "Where were you tonight?" she asked, her gaze locked onto his. "I told you I had a business meeting," he replied, his voice calm but guarded. "Don't lie to me, Ayo," she said sharply. "I followed you." The color drained from his face. For a moment, he didn't speak, his silence confirming what she already knew. "I saw you," Amara continued, her voice trembling with anger. "I saw you with her, laughing, touching, kissing her. Don't try to deny it." Ayo's shoulders slumped. "Amara, don't make excuses." She cut him off, her voice rising. "Tell me the truth. How long has this been going on?" He sighed deeply, his guilt written all over his face. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he said quietly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her heart shattered at his words. "So it's true," she whispered. "You've been cheating on me." Ayo nodded reluctantly. "Yes," he admitted. "I'm sorry, Amara. I never wanted to hurt you." "Hurt me," she echoed, her voice breaking. "You've done more than hurt me, Ayo. You've destroyed everything we built together. Why? Why would you do this to us?" "I don't know," he said, his voice barely audible. "I felt lonely, overwhelmed, like I wasn't appreciated." Amara stared at him in disbelief. "Not appreciated? Are you serious? I've supported you, cared for you, raised our children. Everything I've done has been for this family. And this is how you repay me?" "I know," he said, his head in his hands. "I know I messed up. I let my insecurities take over. I made a terrible mistake." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't just make a mistake, Ayo. You made a choice. A choice to betray me and this family. Don't try to justify it." "I'm not," he said quickly. "I'm just trying to explain. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Amara let out a bitter laugh. "Make it right? How do you think you can fix this? Do you think an apology will erase the pain you've caused me?" "No," he admitted, his voice trembling. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to prove to you that I can change. She stood, her hands clenched into fists. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said, her voice raw with emotion. Right now, I can't even look at you. Ayo nodded, his face etched with regret. Take all the time you need, he said. I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. Amara didn't respond. She walked to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Once alone, she sank onto the bed, the weight of her emotions crashing down on her. She had hoped Ayo would deny the affair, that it would all be a misunderstanding. But now, faced with the truth, she felt lost and broken. In the living room, Ayo sat in silence, his head in his hands. He replayed their conversation in his mind, each word a painful reminder of the damage he had done. He knew he had shattered the trust between them, and he didn't know if it could ever be repaired. The night stretched on, heavy with sorrow. Amara lay awake, tears soaking her pillow as she tried to make sense of what had happened. The man she had trusted, the man she had built her life with, had betrayed her in the most personal way. But even in her pain, a spark of determination began to grow. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't let this define her. Whether or not her marriage survived, she would find the strength to heal and move forward. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, Amara made a silent vow to herself. This wasn't the end of her story. She would face the pain, confront the truth, and fight for her dignity. No matter how long it took, she would reclaim her life. Amara stood outside the modest house, her heart pounding in her chest. The neat flower beds and cheerful curtains did little to ease the storm raging inside her. This was the place where her husband had betrayed her, where the life she thought she knew had unraveled. She clenched her fists, trying to steady her breathing. She wasn't here for a confrontation born of anger. She needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. She knocked firmly on the door, her knuckles trembling against the wood. A moment later, the door opened, and standing there was Ada. Amara's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just any woman, it was Ada, someone she had once considered a friend. Memories of shared laughter at community gatherings and whispered conversations over tea flashed through her mind, now tinged with a bitter sense of betrayal. Amara. Ada's voice was tinged with confusion, her brows furrowed. She glanced over Amara's shoulder as if expecting someone else. What are you doing here? Amara swallowed hard, her voice steadier than she expected. I need to talk to you. May I come in? Ada hesitated, glancing back into the house before nodding. She stepped aside, allowing Amara to enter. The living room was cozy and inviting, with soft cushions and framed photos on the walls. It felt impossibly normal, a stark contrast to the chaos in Amara's heart. They sat across from each other, an uncomfortable silence settling over the room. Ada's gaze darted nervously between Amara and the floor. Finally, Amara spoke, her voice low but firm. I know about you and Ayo. Ada's head snapped up, her face a mixture of shock and guilt. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Amara's hands clenched into fists in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. How else was I supposed to find out? Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep sneaking around with my husband? Her words were sharp, but her voice cracked under the weight of her emotions. Ada looked away, her cheeks flushing with shame. I didn't mean for it to happen, she murmured. I didn't wake up one day and decide to fall in love with a married man. Love? Amara spat, her voice rising. You call this love? Destroying someone's marriage? Betraying another woman, someone you once called a friend? That's your idea of love? Ada flinched at the words, her guilt now mingled with defensiveness. It's not that simple, she said, her voice shaking. Ayo told me your marriage was over. He said you were only staying together for the children, that you didn't love each other anymore. Amara felt as though the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Her chest tightened as Ada's words sank in. And you believed him? She asked, her voice trembling. You took his word without question, without even thinking about what it would mean for me, for my family? Ada's eyes brimmed with tears. I wanted to believe him, she admitted. I wanted to believe that what we had was real, that he wasn't just using me. But now I see that he was lying to both of us. Amara stared at Ada, her anger giving way to a deep, hollow ache. The woman sitting across from her wasn't the enemy she had imagined. Ada was a victim of Ayo's lies, just as she was. The realization didn't erase the pain, but it brought a strange sense of clarity. Did he promise you he would leave me? Amara asked, her voice quieter now. Ada nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. He did. He said he needed time to figure things out, but that he didn't love you anymore. I feel so stupid for believing him. The room fell silent, the weight of their shared pain hanging heavy in the air. Amara looked down at her hands, her mind racing. Ayo's betrayal ran deeper than she had imagined. He hadn't just broken her trust, he had built an entire web of lies, ensnaring Ada in the process. I don't know what to do, Ada said suddenly, her voice barely audible. I thought he was different. I thought he loved me. But now I see, I was just a fool. Amara looked at her, searching her face for any hint of insincerity, but all she saw was regret. For a moment, she felt a flicker of compassion for Ada. They were both victims of the same man, caught in the same painful situation. I'm not here to fight you, Amara said finally, her voice steady but laced with exhaustion. I'm here because I need to understand. I need to know the truth, even if it hurts. Ada nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'll tell you everything I know, she said. You deserve that much. For the next hour, the two women talked. Ada revealed how she and Ayo had met, how their relationship had begun, and the lies he had told her along the way. Amara listened in silence, her emotions a turbulent mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of vindication. The picture Ada painted was one of a man who had lost his way, consumed by selfishness and deception. As Amara stood to leave, Ada reached out and touched her arm. Amara, I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I never meant to hurt you. If I had known the truth, I would never have let this happen. Amara looked at her, her expression unreadable. It's not just you who needs to apologize, she said quietly. He betrayed us both, but I won't let him break me. With that, she walked out of the house, her head held high. The pain in her chest was still there, but so was a newfound sense of determination. She had faced the woman who had been at the center of her husband's betrayal, and she had walked away stronger. The road ahead was uncertain, but Amara knew one thing for sure. She would not let Ayo's actions define her. She was ready to fight for herself, for her family, and for the truth. The news of Ayo's affair spread like wildfire through the village of Oluwo, turning the once respected couple into the subject of relentless gossip. Conversations at market stalls and church gatherings buzzed with whispers. Can you believe it? One woman murmured, Ayo cheated on Amara, the perfect marriage. Amara's private heartbreak was now public, and the weight of the villagers' stares and pity followed her everywhere. At home, her family was in an uproar. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice filled with anger as she paced their living room. Amara, you must leave him. No man who disrespects his wife like this deserves your forgiveness. Her father, a quieter but equally firm presence, added, a marriage is built on trust. If that trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. Shaik, her younger brother, slammed his fist on the table. Just tell me where to find him. I'll make him regret ever hurting you. Amara, sitting silently, finally found her voice. What about the children? She said, her tone soft but strained. I can't make a decision without thinking about them. This isn't just about me. Her mother softened, though her resolve remained. The children need a strong mother. Staying with a man who betrayed you isn't strength, Amara, it's sacrifice. Meanwhile, Ayo's family was reeling from the scandal. His parents, pillars of the community, arrived at Amara's home the next morning. Ayo's mother, wringing her hands, spoke first. Amara, we are so sorry for what Ayo has done. He has shamed us all. Please don't let this mistake destroy your family. Amara's mother cut in sharply. And what would you have her do? Pretend it never happened. Forgive him just like that. Ayo's father, a steady and dignified figure, replied, no one is asking her to forget, but forgiveness is not just for him, it's for the children and the life they've built together. The tension between the two families mirrored the growing divide within the village. Some villagers rallied behind Amara, urging her to leave Ayo and prioritize her dignity. Others, especially the elders, encouraged reconciliation, citing the importance of keeping the family intact. This is not just about them, said one elder. It's about their children and the legacy of their family. Forgiveness may be hard, but it's often the right choice. The conflicting advice only deepened Amara's inner turmoil. Each decision seemed weighted with consequences. Staying might compromise her self-respect, but leaving could upend her children's lives. The village elders eventually called a community meeting to mediate the growing conflict. Under the shade of the baobab tree, families gathered to discuss the matter. Mzee Juma, the eldest and most respected elder, opened the meeting. "This is not just a family matter, it is a community matter," he began solemnly. "What has happened here affects us all. We must find a way to move forward." Tensions ran high as Ava's parents begged for understanding while Amara's family expressed their anger. Ayo, seated quietly, looked as though the weight of his actions had drained the life from him. Finally, Mzee Juma turned to Amara. "You have heard from everyone. But this decision ultimately lies with you. What do you need to begin healing?" Amara hesitated, feeling the weight of every gaze upon her. She took a deep breath and said, "I need time. Time to think, time to heal, and time to decide what's best for me and my children." The elders nodded in agreement. "Time is a wise request," Mzee Juma said. "We cannot rush forgiveness, nor can we undo the pain that has been caused, but we can stand by you as you navigate this path." As the meeting concluded and the villagers began to disperse, Amara felt a small glimmer of relief. For the first time, her voice had been heard and her need for space respected. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was determined to face it on her own terms. The fallout from Ayo's betrayal was swift and unrelenting. The once respected businessman now faced the whispers and judgment of the entire village. His family's reputation, carefully built over the years, was in tatters, but nothing weighed heavier on him than the pain he had caused Amara. Her devastated expression haunted his thoughts, and her guarded demeanor was a constant reminder of the trust he had shattered. Determined to make amends, Ayo began the difficult journey of redemption. His first step was to break off all contact with Ada. One evening, he drove to her house, his heart heavy with the weight of his actions. When she opened the door, her expression hardened at the sight of him. "What do you want, Ayo?" she asked, her tone cold. "I came to tell you it's over," Ayo said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and I need to fix them. This can't continue." Anna crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "You think you can just walk away and everything will be fine? You used me, Ayo. Do you even understand the damage you've caused?" "I know I've hurt you too," Ayo admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor, "but staying in this mess will only make things worse. I'm sorry, Ada, but this is the end." The conversation was tense and emotionally draining, but Ayo left her house feeling a small sense of resolution. It was a necessary step, but he knew it was only the beginning of his journey. Next, Ayo sought help. He enrolled in counseling, both individual and couples sessions, even though Amara had not yet agreed to join him. In his private sessions, he faced uncomfortable truths about himself, his selfishness, his insecurities, and the emotional walls he had built over the years. During one session, the counselor asked, "Why did you betray Amara? What were you searching for?" Ayo hesitated, struggling to articulate the answer. "I think I felt unappreciated," he admitted. "I thought I deserved more recognition, more of something. But now I see that I was chasing something that was already in front of me. I just didn't value it enough." The counselor nodded. "Acknowledging that is the first step. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about proving through your actions that you've changed. This will take time and effort, Ayo. Are you prepared for that?" "I am," Ayo replied, his voice filled with determination. "I have to be. I can't lose my family." Ayo's efforts extended beyond the private sphere. He began taking small but significant actions to demonstrate his commitment. He volunteered to help with community projects, repairing fences and organizing events to rebuild his reputation. At home, he became more present, helping with household chores and spending time with their children, Toby and Neka. One evening, as he helped Neka with her homework, she looked up at him and asked, "Papa, why don't you laugh with Mama anymore?" The innocent question pierced Ayo's heart. He forced a smile and said, "I'm trying, Neka. I'm trying to make things better." In addition to his efforts at home, Ayo decided to address the villagers directly. At a community gathering under the baobab tree, he stood before the crowd, his hands trembling but his resolve firm. I know I've let you all down, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of their stares. But more importantly, I've let down my wife, my children, and myself. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to say that I'm sorry and that I'm committed to being a better man. The crowd was silent, their expressions a mix of skepticism and surprise. Amara, seated near the back, watched him with unreadable eyes. I know words are not enough, Ayo continued. That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to prove through my actions that I've learned from my mistakes. I don't expect it to be easy, but I'm willing to do the work. When he finished, there was no applause, only the murmurs of villagers as they processed his words. Ayo stepped down, his heart heavy but his determination unwavering. He knew it would take more than one speech to undo the damage he had caused, but it was a start. Amara, watching from afar, felt a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Was it hope? Skepticism? Only time would tell. In the days that followed, Ayo continued his efforts. He wrote letters to Amara, pouring out his thoughts and regrets. He sought advice from the elders, asking for their guidance on how to rebuild trust. Slowly but surely, he began to see small changes. The villagers, once cold and distant, began greeting him again. Amara, though still guarded, started responding to his attempts at conversation with less hostility. The journey was far from over, but Ayo was determined to keep moving forward. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope that redemption, however difficult, might be possible. Amara stood at the crossroads of her life, torn between anger, heartbreak, and the faint hope of reconciliation. The weight of Ayo's betrayal pressed down on her chest, and every step she took forward felt like an uphill climb. Each time she looked into the faces of her children, Toby and Neka, she felt the pull of their innocent questions and unspoken fears. "Mama, why is Papa so sad?" they asked. Their words were simple, but the answers were far too complex to explain. Amara turned to the people around her for advice, seeking wisdom to guide her through the storm. Her first stop was the elders of the village, who had seen decades of life's joys and trials. Sitting under the shade of the baobab tree, she poured her heart out, recounting the events of the past months. Nzibaraka, the most respected elder, listened intently, his weathered face lined with concern. When she finished, he took a deep breath and said, "Amara, forgiveness is not weakness, but it must be earned. Trust, once broken, is like a shattered pot. It can be mended, but the cracks will always remain. Only you can decide if those cracks are worth living with." Another elder, Mama Ifua, chimed in. "Child, I've lived through many storms in my life. I forgive my husband for his own mistakes, and while it wasn't easy, we rebuilt what we had lost. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go of the anger that eats away at you. Only you know if your heart can bear that burden." Amara nodded, their words lingering in her mind as she left the gathering. She sought advice from her friends next, each with their own perspective shaped by their experiences. Her closest friend, Neka, was firm in her stance. "Amara, you deserve better," she said, her tone filled with righteous anger. "You've always been a strong woman. You don't need to stay with Ayo just because he's sorry now. Don't let his mistakes define your life." Ifioma, another friend, took a gentler approach. "Marriage isn't easy," she said. "No one is perfect and people make mistakes. I'm not saying you should forgive him outright, but think about what's at stake. If you believe he's truly changed, it might be worth giving him a chance for yourself and for the children." Even strangers in the market had opinions. As Amara shopped for vegetables, an older woman she barely knew leaned over and whispered, "Don't let pride rob you of your family, child. If he's willing to change, don't throw it all away." But for every voice urging forgiveness, there was another urging her to leave. "A libhart doesn't change its spots," a man said as he overheard the conversation. "Once a man cheats, he'll do it again." The conflicting advice weighed heavily on Amara's mind. She spent her evenings reflecting on her own feelings, trying to separate the noise of others from the truth in her heart. She thought about the life she and Ayo had built together, the love they once shared, the laughter, the dreams. But those memories were now intertwined with the pain of betrayal, and it was difficult to untangle them. Her children were her greatest concern. Toby and Neka didn't fully understand what was happening, but they could sense the tension in the house. Toby, with his innocent curiosity, often asked, "Mama, when will everything go back to normal?" Neka, quieter but perceptive, clung to Amara more often, as if seeking reassurance. One evening, as Amara tucked them into bed, Nika looked up at her and said, "Mama, do you still love Papa?" The question caught Amara off guard, and she struggled to find an answer. "Love is complicated, my child," she said finally. "But no matter what happens, I'll always love you and your brother. That will never change." As she sat alone in the quiet of the night, Amara replayed those words in her mind. Love was indeed complicated. She loved Ayo once, deeply, but that love had been tainted by his actions. Could it ever be restored? Amara began to reflect on herself, something she hadn't done in years. She thought about the sacrifices she had made for her marriage, the dreams she had put on hold, and the ways she had lost herself in the process of being a wife and mother. This betrayal, as painful as it was, forced her to confront those truths. "I need to find myself again," she whispered to the empty room. She decided to take small steps toward healing. She started journaling, pouring her thoughts and emotions onto paper. She attended community gatherings again, reconnecting with the women she had distanced herself from during the turmoil. She even took up gardening, finding solace in nurturing new life as she tried to heal her own wounds. Through these moments of introspection, Amara began to realize that forgiveness wasn't just about Ayo, it was about her. Holding on to the anger and pain was exhausting, and she yearned to let it go. But forgiving Ayo didn't necessarily mean staying with him. That was a separate decision, one she wasn't ready to make just yet. One afternoon, as she tended to her garden, Ayo approached her. He stood silently for a moment before speaking. "Amara," he said softly, "I know I've hurt you in ways I can never take back, but I want you to know that I'm here and I'll keep trying, no matter how long it takes." Amara looked at him, her hands covered in soil. For the first time, she saw not just the man who had betrayed her, but also the man who was trying to rebuild what he had broken. She didn't respond, but the faintest glimmer of hope flickered in her heart. That evening, as the sun set over the village, Amara sat beneath the baobab tree, the same place she had sought advice from the elders. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the cool breeze wash over her. The path ahead was still unclear, but she felt a small sense of peace. Forgiveness was a journey, and Amara was just beginning to take her first steps. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains as Amara sat at her dining table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. It was a quiet day, but the silence in her home only seemed to amplify the noise in her mind. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions: anger, heartbreak, doubt, and the faintest whispers of hope. She often found herself caught in the middle of these emotions, unsure of what her next step should be. A soft knock at the door broke her train of thought. She rose to answer, surprised to see a young boy from the village standing on her doorstep. In his hands he held an envelope, slightly crumpled but addressed to her. "This is from Uncle Ayo," the boy said shyly before running off without another word. Amara closed the door and stared at the envelope in her hands. Her heart raced as she turned it over, recognizing Ayo's handwriting. What could he possibly have to say that hadn't already been said? Slowly, she walked back to the table and sat down, the envelope heavy with unspoken words. For a moment she hesitated. Part of her didn't want to read it, afraid that it would only reopen wounds she was still trying to heal. But curiosity, and perhaps a sliver of hope, got the better of her. She carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was familiar, the strokes slightly uneven as if written in haste or under the weight of emotion. She began to read, her eyes scanning each word, her heart pounding with every sentence. "My dearest Amara, I have sat down to write this letter so many times, but every attempt has felt inadequate. How do I put into words the depth of my regret, the weight of my guilt, and the strength of my love for you? But I must try because you deserve to know what is in my heart. I am sorry, Amara. Those words feel so small compared to the pain I've caused you, but they are true. I am sorry for betraying your trust, for breaking the bond we built together, and for failing to be the husband you deserve. I see now more clearly than ever the damage I've done, not just to you, but to our family, to the life we worked so hard to create. These past months have been a reckoning for me. I've had to face the man I was and the choices I made. It hasn't been easy, but it has been necessary. I have spent this time reflecting, learning, and trying to become a better version of myself, a man worthy of your love and respect. I know that words alone will never be enough. I know that I cannot erase the pain I've caused or undo the harm I've done. But I want you to know that I am committed to making amends, not just with my words but with my actions. I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am serious about change, whether or not you choose to forgive me. Amara, you are the most incredible woman I have ever known. Your strength, your grace, your love, they are gifts I took for granted, and I hate myself for that. But I hope, deep in my heart, that it's not too late for us. I hope that we can find a way to rebuild what I've broken, to create a new foundation based on honesty and respect. I don't expect forgiveness overnight. I don't even expect forgiveness at all. But I do hope that one day you'll see the man I am trying to become and know that it's because of you, because of the love I have for you and the belief that you deserve better. Thank you for reading this. Thank you for giving me the chance to say what's in my heart. I love you, Amara, more than words can ever express. And I will never stop fighting for us, even if that means fighting alone. Yours forever, Ayo. Amara sat back in her chair, the letter trembling in her hands. Tears blurred her vision as she reread certain lines, her emotions a tumultuous mix of sorrow, anger, and something she couldn't quite name. Ayo's words were raw, heartfelt, and filled with the regret she had longed to hear. But they were just that, words. She placed the letter on the table and stared at it for a long time. It stirred something within her, an ache that had been buried beneath layers of anger and disappointment. Ayo's sincerity was clear, but her wounds ran deep and trust was not something that could be rebuilt with a single letter. The next few days were spent in quiet contemplation. Amara kept the letter folded neatly in her journal, reading it again when the house was quiet, when her mind wandered to what could have been and what might still be. She shared it with her closest friend, Neka, seeking an outside perspective. "He sounds sincere," Neka said after reading it. "But sincerity isn't enough, Amara. He has to show you that he's changed, that he's willing to do the work. You deserve nothing less." Amara nodded, her thoughts echoing Neka's words. The letter had given her a glimpse into Ayo's heart, but it wasn't enough to erase the pain or rebuild the trust he had broken. Still, it was a step, a small but significant step towards something she wasn't yet sure she wanted. That evening, as the sun set over the village, Amara sat under the mango tree in her backyard, the letter resting in her lap. She closed her eyes and let the cool breeze wash over her, her mind quieter than it had been in weeks. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Ayo's letter had reminded her of the love they once shared, and while that love had been tarnished, it wasn't entirely gone. Whether or not it could be rekindled was a question only time would answer. But for now, Amara resolved to take things one day at a time, letting her heart guide her toward whatever came next. The first rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the room as Amara sat on the edge of her bed, lost in thought. The weight of the past months still lingered in her chest, but today felt different. She had spent countless nights replaying every memory, every moment, and every mistake that had brought her and Ayo to this point. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't an act of weakness but one of immense strength. It wasn't about erasing the pain, but about choosing to let go of its hold over her future. That morning she called Ayo and asked him to meet her under the old mango tree in their backyard. It was a place that had once been their sanctuary, where they had shared their dreams and planned their future. Now it felt like the right place to decide if those dreams could be rebuilt. Ayo arrived promptly, his face a mixture of hope and trepidation. He had spent months trying to prove his commitment, attending counseling, repairing his fractured relationships within the community, and quietly working to become a better man. But he knew that all his efforts hinged on this moment, on whether Amara could find it in her heart to give him another chance. They sat across from each other, the silence between them heavy and not hostile. Amara took a deep breath, steadying herself before she spoke. "Ayo, I thought long and hard about everything that's happened. I've prayed, I've reflected, and I've sought advice from those I trust. And I've come to a decision." His heart pounded as he braced himself for her next words. "I'm willing to give us one last chance," she said, her voice steady but firm. "But it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. If we're going to move forward, it has to be on my terms. Do you understand?" Ayo nodded quickly, his eyes glistening with emotion. "I understand, Amara. Whatever you need, I'll do it. I'll prove to you that I'm serious." "Good," she replied, "because this isn't just about me forgiving you. It's about rebuilding trust, and that's going to take time. I need you to be patient and consistent. No more empty promises, Ayo. Your actions will speak louder than any words you can say. Amara then outlined her boundaries. She insisted on full transparency, no more secrets, no more lies. She requested that they continue attending counseling together, as well as individually, to address the deeper issues in their relationship. She made it clear that she needed space to heal and wouldn't tolerate any attempts to rush the process. I need you to understand something, she said, looking directly into his eyes. This isn't just about saving our marriage. It's about creating a new foundation, one built on honesty and respect. If at any point I feel like you're not committed to this, I won't hesitate to walk away. Ayo's voice trembled as he responded, I promise you, Amara, I'll do whatever it takes. I know I can't erase the past, but I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your forgiveness. Their journey toward healing was slow and fraught with challenges. At first, Amara found it difficult to let her guard down. The memories of Ayo's betrayal lingered like a shadow, casting doubt over his every gesture. But Ayo remained patient, understanding that her hesitance was a natural response to the pain he had caused. He began to show his commitment through small, consistent actions. He took on more responsibilities at home, ensuring the children's needs were met and helping with household chores. He planned family outings, rekindling moments of joy and laughter that had been absent for so long. He also made an effort to listen, truly listen, to Amara's feelings, validating her pain without defensiveness or excuses. Their counseling sessions became a cornerstone of their journey. Together, they worked through the underlying issues that had contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. Ayo confronted his own insecurities and learned healthier ways to cope with stress, while Amara explored her feelings of betrayal and began to rebuild her sense of self-worth. The community, ever watchful, noticed the changes in Ayo. The man who had once been the subject of whispers and judgment was now earning back the respect he had lost. The villagers saw him volunteering at the church, helping elders repair their homes, and dedicating his time to family. Slowly, their opinions began to shift, and a sense of cautious hope emerged. Amara, too, started to feel the weight of her pain lifting. There were moments of doubt, of course, nights when she lay awake wondering if she had made the right choice. But there were also moments of connection, like the evenings when she and Ayo sat together on the porch, sharing quiet conversations as the stars glittered above. One evening, as they watched their children playing in the yard, Ayo turned to Amara and said, "Thank you for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll spend every day earning it." Amara looked at him, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. It's not about deserving, Ayo. It's about deciding to move forward together. But don't think for a second that I'll settle for anything less than your best. I wouldn't dream of it, he replied with a small smile, his voice filled with sincerity. As the months passed, the cracks in their relationship began to mend. The journey was far from perfect, but it was theirs. They celebrated small victories, like the first time Amara felt comfortable enough to share her feelings without fear of being dismissed, or the first time Ava noticed her laughing freely again. The process of healing was slow and ongoing, but it was also transformative. Their marriage was no longer the same as it had been before. It was stronger, more honest, and built on a foundation of mutual respect. As they stood together one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Amara felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time in months, she believed in the possibility of a brighter future. Hand in hand, they walked back toward their home, ready to face whatever came next, together.